Why don't we start with what's going on in the world of like malicious packages? The last, I don't know, 2 weeks for us have at least been pretty chaotic with all of these attacks. Do you see there, being kind of like a turning point in how malware gets treated by the industry?
Yeah, it's funny. So 10 years ago, I was thinking a lot about this problem because I was working on OpenStack, and OpenStack was pulling in 250 open source Python packages. And it occurred to me as somebody responsible for OpenStack security, if any of those gets compromised, then like the whole thing's done. And I was just frankly like really surprised with the state of Python package security. So at the time there was no like 2FA to publish packages. There was no brute force protection. And it's like one of those 250 maintainers at least has reused the password or has a terrible password or something. So I really didn't feel good about it. But nobody else was paying attention to it. I was just kind of like, yeah, that's just the way the world works. And so I was like, okay, that's the way the world works. And I just moved on. One thing that I find interesting about the security industry is that it does just go through cycles. Mm-hmm. So it's like the exact same thing is true today that was true 10 years ago, but now everybody cares about it. And 10 years ago, nobody cared about it. So I think there's kind of a hive mentality going on.
Yeah, I see a lot of parallels with Log4j and CVEs, that kind of more conscious, this is a thing that we need to be, addressing programmatically. Do you think that we're headed that way with malware, where more vulnerability management programs will have malware detection and prevention and mitigation as like a more explicitly, we're going to do this thing, as opposed to maybe being more focused on CVEs, for example?
Probably. I think security is just so driven by budget cycles, and when something gets in the news as much as the NPM vulnerabilities have been in the last 2 weeks, then executives pay attention to it. They ask the security team, what are you doing about this? And then security team all of a sudden gets new budget to go and solve the problem. It starts to take over more of the CISO dinners. Everybody talks about malware and how are you solving it and whatever. What's funny is that it's going to be basically the exact same thing all over again as we did with like antivirus. And then it's not antivirus, it's next gen antivirus, it's EDR. So we've gone through this whole cycle before. It's still going to be heuristics based, right? Like look at the thing, do we see anything like visibly wrong with it? And we've also seen, I think it was the XC package, which had very sophisticated backdoor. We're not going to find that. And at the end of the day, all of this code that we're pulling in that's not our code is vulnerable or could be vulnerable. And we're, I guess, going to have like very low grade detections about that will hopefully get better.
Yeah, I mean, I worked previously in national security looking at passport fraud, and you kind of catch the egregious ones, right? The really obvious ones. Where do you think, like setting tooling aside, how do you see engineering organizations and security teams like adapting to being more cautious about what they're consuming, how they consume it?
Yeah, I think so. The industry is going to solve this very different ways. In general, my view of security in general is that we should be solving those kinds of problems as much as we can for engineers and not have to make them worry about what's the latest security thing this week, what do I have to do to prevent it. So I think the right way to handle this is we have good tooling that integrates and notices anytime either a new package has been pulled in or an update to a package happens that significantly changes some attribute of it. And then the security team looks at it and vets out whether that's safe. Obviously, engineers are going to add something, sometimes to build CI, whatever, and we need to have the tooling to catch that and then flag it for immediate review.
Immediate, yeah.
But it has to have the context. We don't really want engineers to have to ramp into, as much as I've been paying attention about this for 10 years, we just want them to get the right information that they need and not have to be keeping up with the security news of the day.
And do you think that might look like something like, hey, this package literally just came out, let it breathe a little bit, or we see some potentially sketchy, behavior in this package? This is a, maintainer that we're not familiar with. Like, what kind of context do you think engineers need?
Yeah, so I think one of the concepts that I learned a while ago that was really powerful for me is the type 1, type 2 thinking. So there's like the fast autopilot, like I'm just doing things, I'm not really thinking about them. And that's what phishing relies on. You're just cruising, you're not really like paying a lot of attention. And then there's the slow thinking. and you can use nudges to kick people over into the other one, the slow. And so that's probably what it's going to look like is engineer writes something, they fat finger it. They've pulled in a package that has 1/100th the adoption that some other package has, or it's brand new and this other one is 5 years old. So that kind of heuristic, if you just present them with the context, then they will catch the mistake themselves, and security doesn't have to be involved at all. That's probably like what good's going to look like. And then at some point, it's like, I don't know, these both look kind of equally good, and security should have some kind of an opinion or help the engineer decide like what is the right package to use in this case.
Yeah. So kind of zooming out a bit, talk to me about AnySphere's, Cursor's security program. The question I like to ask is, why is it funded? What is the raison d'etre that the company has a security program beyond the very obvious, people probably wouldn't use your tool if you didn't have something?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think the why of a security program is always very important, and it has to be specific to a company. For example, Amazon, Google, like big cloud providers, if they get compromised, then like all of their downstream customers are compromised. So like they have to get security to the 99.999%. They have nation state attackers. At Cursor specifically, users are entrusting us with a few things. So one, there's a binary that we run on their system, which is our actual IDE, our CLI. They want to know that when they install that or they update it, that it's safe for them to do so. And that's just standard with any kind of mass market consumer thing that you install. Then there's the AI itself. So what our customers use us for is AI software development. And that will use AI to perform actions and create code. And they want to have confidence that when they do that, that it's safe. If they don't feel like it's safe, then it's going to impact how the company grows. So that's another one. And then finally, we have increasing amount of data. We have a privacy mode where we retain no code data of any of our customers. We can't even see it ourselves. But there's another mode where there is data of our customers, and we want to be really good stewards of that data. I think that today we invest relatively overweight for a company at our stage, just because we know that it's important, and we want everybody that uses Cursor to feel like that's a safe choice.
Yeah, I mean, as a growing technology space, if you mess this up, that could be the end of a company, right?
Yep.
So you are fairly new to Cursor, from the acquisition between AnySphere and Resourcely. You have a fair amount of experience securing AI products. And at the same time, both of those companies are very developer focused, right? Presumably both internally as well as like literal developer related products. How do you think about balancing that, managing and creating a security program to address the things that you just talked about, while also taking into account developer speed, developer friction, things like that?
Yeah, so what I would like is probably the same as what everybody at Cursor would like, which is we are the best AI coding solution that exists. And we hire really good people, and they are experts in their domain. And so, for example, one of our product engineers, I would love for them to be focused on making it the best product that anybody can possibly use for its task. I think one of the ways that, security can be an annoying function, right? In some organizations, you come in and you're the wet blanket. You're like, here's a bunch of risks, here's all the stuff that you have to go fix before you actually get done the business stuff. The way that we're approaching it is a bit different than that. So we are doing true security engineering. I think the function of security at Cursor is to take care of security, all that stuff I just said about customer safety, make those things true, and make engineers have to worry about security as little as possible. So for example, in some companies you would buy a vulnerability feed, and then you would figure out a way to auto-assign JIRA tickets to the engineers that own those parts of the product. Our approach is different. We are going to handle the patching ourselves, for example.
So the security team will actually do upgrades?
Yes, and if we get a vulnerability reported in Cursor, we are the ones that are cutting PRs to fix that issue.
So following that tangent, presumably you're looking for security engineers with really good development chops. What do you look for when you hire?
So what we're looking for are generalists, first and foremost. So there's a lot of work to be done. Those are going to be in totally different areas. So for example, I might be doing detection work one week, and then cloud work the next week, AppSec work the week after that. So that kind of a mindset where I'm not in a box, I can float around and do anything that needs to be done at the company. That's one. Two, definitely enjoying being an enabler of the business and not a risk advisory function in security. And then third, just strong engineering. So for security folks, we really want them to be domain experts in security, at least one area, and then also very, very comfortable writing, producing, reviewing software.
One of the trends that we're definitely seeing, I don't even know if it's a trend as much as just the reality, is most organizations have a very high ratio of developers to security engineers. It can be one security engineer to 100 developers. Often some of our customers, it's 250, 300 developers. If your security engineers are as involved as you're talking about and actually upgrading software packages, what do you see as a sustainable staffing model to be able to do that? And where does tooling help you scale?
So I think that we're going to end up with a much lower ratio than that, for the reason that in a lot of companies, security can in many ways create more work than they solve. They start adopting a whole bunch of visibility solutions, they don't tune them well, they start creating a bunch of noise. And so that needs to be managed carefully. In our particular case, since we are actually doing engineering work, if we somehow run out of security things to deal with that week, I'll pitch in on infrastructure, I'll pitch in on product work, and same with everybody on the team. So I think that we will be at a higher ratio or a lower ratio.
Yeah, whichever one's that one.
Yeah, exactly. We will have more of that just for the simple reason that we are end-to-end handling these problems, and we do create code, and we are engineers to the point where we can make features that are helpful. There's also economy of scale factors. So if I buy some solution and it tells me about vulnerabilities, and then I file the JIRA tickets. Now, the engineer that gets the JIRA ticket, they have to figure out if something, first of all, is impactful or not. Second of all, is it even safe to patch the thing, or is it going to take down your service? And so there are ways, for example, 3 jobs ago we were at Netflix, and we had a strong canary system where everything that was going to get deployed could go to another environment. We would automatically route a small amount of traffic. We would monitor for health. We could roll it back and stop routing traffic. So those kinds of things, any individual engineer is not super incentivized to go create a canary system for a company like Cursor, but if I own patching end to end and I need that, times my entire product surface, I am very incentivized to create it. So by centralizing all of that excellence and then also not ripping work over the wall asymmetrically, I think that we create the right kind of incentive.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really removing that fear of breaking changes by owning it yourselves, saying, if an upgrade needs to happen, it's not, we're going to add it to your next sprint and you're responsible for it, but we'll take care of it. We'll refactor the application. But also through canary testing, it's not just going to roll out and crash the app.
Right.
That's great. So thinking about AnySphere's kind of nascent application security program, most startups hit this point where at one point application security was owned by somebody in engineering, a DevOps person, an infrastructure person, a manager even. You're moving to a more mature model where there's specific ownership for that program. This transition usually involves a lot of trust building, but it sounds like it's going to be really different at Cursor because you're not introducing noise to developers. So how are you seeing that transition going so far? Obviously you removed a previous tool that I assume was noisy, maybe not working. Do they see this as, oh great, now this is a thing that's handled and we don't have to worry about it, or what's that look like?
Yeah, so it's a strict improvement, frankly. So anybody that's been at a startup before will know that the number one priority of any startup is survival, right? Security at a very early stage startup is not going to be the thing that kills you.
It's your SOC 2 so that people will buy your product.
No, it's product market fit. Do people actually even care? Does anybody want your product, and can it be effectively sold and things like that? So when you have, in our case, founders that are doing some security work, they're going to have to load balance that with everything else that they're doing to try and make the company survive. And our founders in particular, cared a lot about security and had a strong security background. And so we had tools enabled that told us about vulnerabilities in packages. Like that was just a thing that was on when I came in. The problem with that is, untuned tools, again, are going to give you like way more noise than you can deal with. And so in that environment, you can either live with, we're just going to automatically patch everything all the time and deal with any of the fallout incidents that we have, or we're going to have to get really good at finding the impactful stuff. And so that's one of the things that I've taken on in joining Cursor. And it's a strict improvement from other people's perspective, because now they know that somebody's on it. They're focused on this thing. They've been through it a couple of times before. And not only are they watching for impactful things, whereas before it was just this big pile of noise that nobody could watch effectively, but also that if anything is impactful, that they will take the engineering burden of going and making sure that that thing gets neutralized.
So you have security-aware leadership, which is fantastic. I know what it's like to work at a place like that. With them being familiar enough with kind of how this goes and knowing that they need to detect vulnerabilities, what kind of things do they care about? What do they want to know from you that shows you're making progress with the program?
One of the things that I really enjoy about Cursor is the culture. Very much reminds me of Netflix, which is instead of a top-down, there's leadership, and then leadership wants certain things out of security. It is we hire people that we believe are like the absolute best at this thing, and then we just trust that they have it under control. If they need anything, if I need anything, I will go ask our leadership for help. But in general, they're not asking questions. They don't want metrics. They assume that since we have good security people there that live and breathe this stuff, that they don't have to worry about it. And if there's a problem, we'll come let them know. And
then do they presumably then facilitate that conversation with the board or anyone else who has maybe a step outside of that? Or is it kind of just cultural, like the board knows security has security handled, engineering has engineering handled, and they're worried about go to market, for example?
Quite frankly, I don't know, but we did just hire a CISO who started yesterday, Tom.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, and he will be communicating with the board. So
he gets that.
Tom has it under control. This is one of those things where I know Tom's good, and he'll go and deal with whatever the board needs to know about.
Love it. So in terms of using AI within Cursor, I would assume you all are. How do you think about using AI for security? And I don't just mean the, crop of startup tools that have come out for, whatever AI security thing, but how are you thinking about it for making your team more effective? Like, even though you're willing to invest in more staff, how are you having them use it? Or how are they already using it?
It's the greatest gift ever, quite frankly. So 10 years ago or so, I heard some loose quote, which is the NSA's hacking group, TAO, Tailored Access Organization or something, operations, they would come in and they would infiltrate a company and they would understand the way the company worked better than everybody at the company does. And what they meant is that chaos is the enemy of security in an organization. There's just too much stuff, too many things changing. You don't really understand how anything works, especially if you're in a place where security is 1 to 100 or something. Like, things are changing around you faster than you can keep up with. AI is really good at just telling you how something works or what has changed. So I'm personally, and everybody on my team uses it that way all the time. If I have to ramp into a system to patch something, for example, I'm going to get up to speed very quickly on the code base by just having a conversation with AI and having it show me things.
Yeah, I mean, to your earlier point, if you're hiring a bunch of generalists, presumably they're not an expert in all the languages you have, or maybe someone has more AppSec versus CloudSec experience. So using it that way as an acceleration tool. Are you also looking at using it in your own, security engineering efforts? For example, I talked to somebody else in the community who's using it to generate WAF rules.
Oh, constantly, every single day, yeah. I would say everybody in engineering at Cursor, including us in security, uses Cursor constantly. We build Cursor with Cursor, and that's the same thing for security. I've heard metrics about how effective people are when they introduce AI coding, and those tend to be, 10% or 40%, and honestly, I have no idea what they're talking about. For me, using AI to implement security work, I would guess that I'm 5 times more effective than I am without it. So projects that would normally take weeks, I can get done in half a week.
What are some tips that you would have for using Cursor for security?
Yeah, so anytime you're unfamiliar, first of all, with, like I said, how something works, you go ask the right questions. There's no bad questions with AI. It's not going to ridicule you that you don't know how something works. So that's one. Two, any kind of like new syntax. For example, your point, firewall rules. I have no idea how to write Suricata rules, but I don't have to. I go have a conversation with AI. I try some things. I can try experiments very quickly now. Even writing Terraform, I can go get something deployed pretty instantly with AI. So I can try experiments, learn how something works, have a back and forth conversation until I understand some new technology. And then finally, any kind of gradual deployment, like how does this thing work, troubleshooting, all of that is so much faster as well that, honestly, it blows my mind when people say 10% more effective. Like that number is off by orders of magnitude to me.
I mean, when I hear those kind of numbers and frankly stories, most of the time what I'm hearing is a frustration that they're having to correct things that AI did, that the AI, whether it's Cursor or some other tool, wrote the code in a way that doesn't fit into their overall architecture, or essentially the context is so big that it's kind of losing track of things. So what do you do to avoid, I guess, having to rework what the tool did for you?
Yeah, so first of all, one personal observation that I have is that people do not use them correctly. So they will come in and they will try to, lovingly handcraft the perfect prompt. They'll spend hours writing a prompt, and then they'll expect that they're going to one-shot it, and they'll say either the AI did or didn't do everything correctly. I think that's completely wrong. The way that I use it is very collaboratively. So I will say, okay, we're starting off with a blot. Let's do this first. And it will go and implement something. I'll say, let's do this way instead. And then that thing's done. I'm like, great, let's go do this thing next. And
sequential.
the whole time it's back and forth. And then also for all of the people that say, the AI made a mistake. Yes, but also it catches a bunch of mistakes that I make too. So it's very much like a paired programmer, rubber duck kind of situation when I use AI. The AI and I are bouncing ideas off of each other. And then finally, everything that we do goes through BugBot, which is our AI review tool. And a bunch of times BugBot finds bugs that I didn't catch, and then I'll go and fix those again, with AI and commit it back through.
How do you feel about MCP servers?
Mixed. So in general, I think it's good to give. I think that MCP is most useful for putting boundaries around what you want AI systems to do. So I guess one question is, why do we even have MCP? Like, why don't we just have the AI use CLIs? We already have an interface where something can use software and then deal with APIs. So that's one view of it. I think where MCP becomes particularly useful is saying okay, but I don't want you to use all of the CLI. I want you to have, AWS create an instance. I don't want you to have AWS EC2 everything.
Right, because the bumpers on it.
Exactly. So I think that's the most useful. And then MCP comes bundled with prompts, so you can tell the AI, more information about how to use it, give it examples, whereas a CLI, has a manual, but nobody reads manuals. So
I talked to a lot of people in the community who are worried about the security risks of using MCP servers. There's a lot of worry about authorization and access to data. We haven't seen a big, exposure yet. So at this point, I think it's mostly theoretical. But how real of a challenge / threat do you see that?
It's funny because I would say all of the AI security issues are just rehashing of the same issues that we've dealt with before. So once again, we're dealing with authorization isn't very good, and we tend to give things like star and hope for the best. So you can definitely have issues where you have a very over-permissioned system that AI can call, and then you have confused deputy problems among the callers of that system. That's a whole class of issue. There's prompt injection, which is basically just a rehash of command injection and SQL injection and cross-site scripting and all of the other, we didn't separate the control plane and the data plane, elements of software, just rehash it again. Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely that. And then all of that aside, AI can just do wrong stuff sometimes, right? So it just, I don't know, it got it wrong and it decided that the best way to unstick me was to reset my file system or whatever. That kind of stuff can happen too. So I think that the concerns about having AI do a bunch of stuff, those are well-founded. I wouldn't use it that way. I tend to run with broad permissions to systems that I touch. And I would like to review potentially dangerous commands before they get run every single time.
No YOLO mode for you?
No YOLO mode for me. We would like to make that safe, and we have some good ideas about how to do it, at least safer. I don't think anybody should ever do YOLO mode for potentially destructive actions. Like, I think that those should always be reviewed. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of rehashing of, how do we do authorization well kind of issues that we're going to do all over again for AI and giving it tools. And I think these things will get ironed out to the same degree that we did with cross-site scripting. Like, it's still an issue, but there's also secure kind of frameworks and ways to use it that mitigate a lot of the issues.
This may be getting beyond what you're willing to talk about, but how much do you feel like vendors like Cursor are somewhat responsible for driving that?
I don't really have an opinion.
Yeah.
I think the company cares a lot about security and enabling people to use AI safely, and also there's more opportunity in the market than we can all do. Like, as much as it feels like a fast moving and fast growing company, there's still a ton of opportunity. So frankly, some of this I would love for other vendors to solve. I think that one good way that we can handle this is to give our users basically like a flexible system that they can integrate with. And so if they want every single command that AI logs or every single command that AI runs to be logged, then in their specific system, they can go set that up.
Right.
Like, we gave them a thing that is every time command, go do this thing. And then similarly, prompt injection, I would love for this to be systemically solved. Quite frankly, I don't think that we're going to solve this. I think this has to be solved at a foundation model level. And so to that extent, we want to give our customers a way before commands run or before certain types of commands run that they can go check it out and see if it's safe or not.
Yeah. Okay, switching to talking more specifically about your software composition analysis, program decisions. When you came in, there was kind of a we'll say table stakes SCA tool in place. You made a decision to remove that. You talked a little bit earlier about the drivers for that being if you're getting a bunch of alerts and you can't act on them, what's the point? Can you talk a bit more about what triggered the decision to go look for a paid tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, if there is going to be patching stuff done in the name of security, then it's going to be our team doing it. I don't want to stop my product engineers from innovating by asking them to go patch something, and especially not by asking them to go patch something that I don't actually know if it's impactful or not. So given that there's no throwing work over the wall, all of the security work in this domain, if engineers want to upgrade a library for functionality reasons, great, they can do that kind of patching. If the patching is strictly for security, then I own it, or my team owns it. And so in that case, I really need to know, is this something that we care about or not? Because as much as we'd like to believe that patching is always safe, even for minor versions, sometimes it's not.
I mean, our data shows 95% have the potential for breaking changes.
Exactly.
That's a really shockingly high percentage.
Exactly. So every time, and also as a security team, I don't want to be known as somebody that causes instability in the system. I really care about making sure that when I do work, it's well vetted work and it's as safe as I can make it. So with all of that context, given that it's going to be my work, I want it to be safe. And I have a bunch of other stuff that I need to do as well. The first thing I needed was, is this something that we actually care about? And the very obvious answer to that is, we're pulling in tons of libraries, and those libraries pull in tons of libraries as well. And so a lot of these code paths, you get a CVE, that's on a library, and then you don't really know, is the vulnerability something that we're even dealing with?
Is it being used?
Right, yeah, because these libraries are huge sometimes. So there could be some obscure thing over here, we're not using at all. And so that is completely irrelevant. That's just noise. I don't want to look at it or think about it ever again. And so that's where the reachability analysis, that is the holy grail, right? That sifts through this giant list of vulnerabilities I have and tells me okay, here are the ones that could be relevant for you, and brings the big number down to a manageable number.
So what other factors, because again, your team is the team that's, performing these upgrades. It's nobody's full-time job, and I don't think anybody wants that as a full-time job. How are you looking to prioritize what gets upgraded first? Because if you take that cut first and say it's all reachable, then how are you prioritizing what comes first?
Yeah, so it has to be then business context, right? So I use this example from Netflix all the time. I think a lot of the industry will kind of have this very binary decision where it's either it needs to be patched like within 30 days, or like I'm never going to pay attention to this thing again. And that's usually like a CVSS 7.0 cut line, you know? If it's 7.1, it's in the patch cycle. If it's 6.9, like it's dead to us.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that thing makes any sense. So if there was a 4.5, but it, like the way that we're using the package is impactful, and that thing is on our front door edge proxy, like that goes way up the list from like a CVSS 10
Right.
in some like sandbox application over here that has access to nothing. So it's really the business context at that point. Like what is this bit of code? What does it have access to?
Are you running kind of like your own EPSS type of, not algorithm necessarily, because that is what EPSS is, but like looking at both the probability that it can be exploited and then doing customizations to kind of like bump up your own CVSS scores? Or is it more of it's on this application, so I know it's important?
Yeah, I think EPSS is a good idea. I don't know how much stock I put into it. I think something could be EPSS very low, and then somebody writes an exploit, and then it gets shipped into Metasploit or whatever, and then like EPSS jumps all the way up. So I don't think whether it's like trendy and being actively exploited is necessarily the best indicator of risk to me. It's really about the things that I care about protecting, like my crown jewels, and the relative position of this vulnerability to that access.
What other, I guess, related things are important to you in terms of being able to action on alerts?
Yeah, it's all data, right? Like that. I think if you look at the really impactful security breaches and incidents, it's all about some kind of data that your company like really cared about protecting and then didn't. And so that's where it all goes to me. It's proximity to data, access to data. Like, is this a system that processes our most sensitive data? Is this thing like in a completely separated account and it has no access to anything? Who's the user base? Are these like all trusted people that like they're not going to go and send a malicious payload to it? Are these like randos from the internet? Like all of that kind of stuff is the kind of context where I'm going to presently do a kind of manual mapping, but eventually I want to make this more automated. We had a system for doing this that I liked at Netflix that would tell us like how much does security care about this particular vulnerability.
And then as this program ramps up, what kind of data do you care about? Are you looking at things like mean time to remediation, number of vulnerabilities on a given product? Like what ultimately will tell you if this program is successful?
I think it's that. I think those two factors, right? Yeah, like what is our overall exposure area and like how is that changing over time? And then mean time to resolution, especially for like things that if we find an issue that we care about and we end up fixing that thing, like what is that full cycle time? Like if we didn't have the right visibility, we might not find out about it for a year. I think the visibility is like one of the first things I got to, and that's part of what Endor helps me solve. And then the other bit is, okay, now we got the visibility. Like I said, our team's going to be doing patching. Like how good are we at that? And that's going to be determined by how risky is it? Like how much other systems have we put in place so that we feel comfortable doing a patch? Because like obviously, I just bump the version number and cut a PR and deploy it. Like that bit's easy. It's all the other stuff around it. So patching is important. It's like one of those evergreen problems in security. It's never going away. And my job here and something that I care a lot about is just making that like a regular fact of life, which means like de-risking it.
Right. Let me see what I might have missed first. In terms of ease of use, extensibility, flexibility, API first, how much of that factored into your decision making when you were looking at tools?
Yeah, a lot of it. So I've got a lot of stuff going on right now, and what I'm looking for are rock solid vendors where I know that it will handle the problem that I'm trying to solve, and I'm not going to have to babysit it. It's not going to be broken all the time. And then, in general, I think that a good tool is going to produce data, and that data is going to go into some other system. I don't want to have to go into the UI like to go and figure out what's going on, or do I care about something. So those were the factors. Like, just want a rock solid product that can send the data where I need it.
So is your plan to centralize all your vulnerability data, regardless of tool, in the same system?
Yep.
Yeah. And will that process-wise for you look like, checking at it periodically to look at those stats we talked about? Is it about that system being there for your engineers to pull tickets from? Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, not the second one.
No?
I don't want engineers going in there and looking at it at all, pulling ticket, none of that. My goal is to never file a ticket for an engineer at this company.
Sorry, I should clarify. You're security engineers.
So I think in general, there's a couple of things I care about. One is, topical new stuff. So, went to bed one night and I woke up and there's a new like critical in something that I care about. Like, so we're going to need some kind of a mechanism for letting us know about that. And then also the progress that we're making. So, going back to the metrics, are we burning those down effectively? And like, how is that improving over time? If we're doing our job, then we're making both of those metrics better over time and we're not regressing. If we're regressing, it means we're not investing enough and we're falling behind.
Okay. Let's see here. You made the decision to select Endor Labs pretty quickly. What happened during the evaluation that gave you the confidence to make that decision quickly?
Yeah. So like I said, the factors that I care about are it's going to be really good. I don't have to babysit it. It gives me the data that I want. It's solid. So I was impressed with how easy it is to integrate Endor. And then the deployment model. So I want this to have full coverage of our organization and all of the repos that I care about. And so I really like the deployment model where we basically like run it internally in a system that we control, and it's not like we just have to install, like, no offense to Endor, but like we don't have to just ship all of our code to you.
We don't want your code.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's a liability for you.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. Yeah, so I was impressed with that, how easy it was to set up, and then the team around it. Like anytime I had a question about anything, they were just immediately on top of it, and then of course, the data it gave me was like, wow, we're going to cut down a ton of these things. Like these were not relevant data that we were looking at before, and now we have 5% of the problem that we used to have. So that whole kind of evaluation cycle was very quick and easy and effective, and it gave me confidence that this is just going to solve the problem for me, and I'll check this off my box and go move on to other things.
Go do other interesting things.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've got a little bit of data. You've been onboarded for about 2 months. We're at 95% dependency resolution and 97.5% noise reduction. So meaning only 2.5 of your findings are reachable. What does that mean to you?
You say, yeah, it's even better than I thought. Yeah,
yeah, it's really good.
yeah, exactly. I mean, those are things that, like I said, I just put those out of my mind. I never think about those things again. So that was basically noise that me or somebody from our team was going to have to look at, and I don't have to look at it anymore. And that number cuts down to something that's so small that, like, if we had to, we could just go manually look at everything all the time.
Yeah.
So that's solving the problem for me. Now I have this like class of issue just covered.
Now, it, again, hasn't been very long, but do you have any examples of, a scenario where Endor has helped you solve something really quickly? You mentioned if you wake up and there's a big vulnerability, something new, story-wise.
Yeah, so I just pop into the UI. Like, despite, I want the API to push the data where I want. Like, I pop
you're
into
still
the
checking it out?
Yeah, I just pop into the UI and like search, like, where is this thing? And then it told me like exactly where it is. So I think it's quite useful for that, like the quick kind of ad hoc investigation. It's just nice and effective and always there.
Do you want it to send you alerts in the future for new things?
Yeah, I'll set it up that way. I'm sure that'll be easy.
Yeah, and then in terms of like if you're going to investigate something that's new, how long does it take you now?
Oh, it's very fast, like 5 minutes. Yeah, I mean, with the combination of the Endor product data and then AI, like I can go get to the bottom of something like very, very quickly.
What would you like in the future? Like, you mentioned your goal is to not be using the UI. So if you're bringing insights from the product and combining it with AI, like what do you want that experience to look like?
Yeah, I think like I mentioned, so the next step after like, here's the stuff I have is going to be augmenting it with my business context. So in the cloud, that's going to look something like tags. Like I just go and say like this thing is connected to this, and then there's going to be like cloud graph kind of stuff going on. So the ability to fold Endor then into that graph and say, okay, like here's the app and like here's the dependencies it has associated with it. Here's any vulnerabilities that are outstanding in it, like that kind of a system. That could end up being in Endor. It could end up being in something else. It could be that I just have really good data feeds. I pull in everything and like just do some lightweight dashboard myself.
I'm going to give you a hypothetical. 6 months to a year from now, you have enough data to be able to see trends about vulnerabilities, dependency health, things like that, from feature to feature. How do you feel like you might use that to engage with your engineering partners if you're seeing trends that worry you?
I will not.
No?
No, I don't want them to have to think about it at all. Like if there's trends that worry me, I'm going to go figure out why those are problems, and then I'm going to go and build a systemic solution to it.
Yeah.
Like I really want every engineer at the company to know, first of all, like treat us like partners. Like security team's never going to create work for you. They're not there to like say no. Like if there's a security thing, like you're just very, very comfortable coming and chatting with us because we're like a true partner for you. And I've been very happy. Like that's what we have going right now. And so it's very important for me to keep that going.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it sounds like you don't see a future where you would need like a security champions program.
No. I mean,
the model that you're doing, I don't see where it would fit in.
All things are possible, when
Sure.
the company grows like huge and like nobody knows each other anymore. But yeah, at present day, I think the way that we're implementing the security program, I don't want engineers to spend their time that way. I want them to go and build awesome product features.
Once onboarding is complete, I kind of understand the role of the product in your day-to-day. What are you looking forward to from us?
Just keep doing the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like solutions that I just, spend a day, get the thing dialed in right, and then just like it's autopilot forever. Like it just solves the problem and tells me about the thing. And so yeah, I don't need anything else from you. Just keep doing the awesome thing that you do.
Right on. If a colleague, friend asked you about Endor Labs, what would you tell them?
I would say that I jumped in, effectively, solved the problem that I was trying to solve, and it's a great team behind it.
All right. Well, that's been great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate the time.
Yeah, it was fun.